Hi, welcome back to Leadership Live. My name is Kim Lewis and I'm the Director of Training and Development at Prepare to Soar. I hope that you enjoyed the Leadership Challenge journey that we were on in previous weeks. We're starting a new journey this week, and it is one of my favorite books by Marcus Buckingham. It's called First Break All the Rules. Actually, an old supervisor of mine gave me a copy of this book because I was technically hired to change the way their processes were done. But this book is so much more. It is actually helping us to develop our people, to take them on a journey, if you will, from average to excellence. And if we can do that, then people will stay in the organization and they will grow with that organization and they will commit to that organization. So that's why I want to introduce you to what they call the mountain climb. Now, how they got started was they decided that if they could interview some people, find out what was important to them, they could devise a way to measure strong workplaces. Workplaces that would attract and retain the most productive employees and scare away those road warriors, the ones who are going to leave at any given notice. So they came up with a series of questions, and if employees answered these questions positively, they would presumably work at higher performing departments or create higher performing departments. Now, if you will think about this climb, it is a psychological climb that you make from the moment you take on a new role, the moment that you get fully engaged in that role. So think about it. Did you recently join a new company, maybe promoted to a new position? Then you are on a mountain climb. And we're going to take you through the stages of this climb so that you can help yourself and your teams grow to that high-performing state. So you are at the start right now today of this long climb. We are going to cover each of these bases or camps or journeys each week. And so this week we're going to focus on the first part of the climb. Now, this climb isn't about a career climb. It isn't your path to the top or a ladder to the top of the organization. Rather, it's a process to build a high-functioning team by engaging and investing in the people on your team. So let's look at that. So over the next few weeks, we're going to climb this mountain. We're going to walk through these stages. Today, we're going to talk about base camp. After base camp comes camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, and then the summit. Now, when we talk about the summit, it isn't that you are climbing that ladder, but that when you get to that summit, that you are loyal and productive in that role. You're good at what you do. You're fully engaged. You know the fundamental purpose of your work, and you're always looking for better ways to fulfill that mission. You are fully engaged at this point. So with that clarified, I want to take you on a little journey, if you will. I loved this climb, and I analyze teams at these climbs because if they're not solid and on each of these climbs, they're not going to be successful. They're going to continually disappoint you and disappoint themselves, and they're going to end up starting over and over and over. And we know that that is costly in organizations. So if you take a little time, invest in your people, you're going to see great results. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So as we get started, I want you to think back to the needs that you had when you first started your current role. We've all been that newbie in a new office. I'm a newbie right now in one of the jobs that I'm doing, and it's tough. And I see myself in this journey. So it's kind of fun for me to follow along as a new employee in a company I'm working with and helping out. So when you first started, what did you want from that role? What did you hope that it would be? What were your expectations? What needs were first and foremost in your mind right at that time? And as time passed, you settled in and your needs changed. Currently, what are your priorities? What do you need from your role today? And have you stayed in that same role? And every time you change your role, I think you'll recognize that you ended up back at base camp, starting your way back up that climb. So let's talk a little bit about base camp. This is where we answer one of the questions called, what do I get? This is the camp that's what do I get? And this is where everybody starts out. And this foundation has to be strong. If you don't have a strong foundation in this piece, it's just like a house. Without a strong foundation, it collapses. That's the same way with your team. They're going to collapse if these aren't answered. And it is a process, and it has to go in order. And that's interesting for me because I'm a random abstract, remember? So I like to get all over the place. But in this one, I understand the process, and I believe in this process. So let's talk a little bit about this. In the new role, when you're in base camp, your needs are pretty basic, right? The main thing is you want to know what's expected of you. You want to know what tasks you're going to be assigned every day. You want to know what your responsibilities are. You want to know how much you're going to earn. I mean, I tell you, these are basic. We want to know what we're going to get paid for the time that we're investing here. How long is my commute going to be? How long is it going to take me to get to work? You also want to know if you're going to have an office, a desk, a computer. I got to tell you, the last job I was in, I got there and I sort of had a desk. It was tilted and slanted. It didn't have a chair. I was always sitting like this so that I could actually use it. It was shared, by the way, for 3 other people, and I was actually a supervisor. Ultimately, they said my goal was to be out in amongst my people. Well, that's great, until they started giving me all this paperwork I had to do. So a computer wouldn't have been important had I didn't have to do some of that paperwork. So we need to know that our fundamental needs are being met when we first get there. Do I know where the bathroom is? Do I know where the break room is? Do I know what time my breaks are? What do I have to wear? What is the dress code? All these fundamental basics get answered in base camp. We need to make sure that people feel comfortable, that they're not always wondering what's going to happen next. And that's one of the things that I always hated about evaluations. I know we get them at the end of the year. Unfortunately, by the end of the year, I've created habits. I've done things that maybe I shouldn't have been doing. I didn't get correctly trained. And so I'm going to definitely fail. And that's not fair to our people. We need to make sure that we're assessing their knowledge, skills, and abilities on each step of this process. Now, remember I said there were 12 questions that are attached to these camps and the summit? Well, here's the 2 that belong to base camp. The first one is, do I know what's expected of me at work? And truly, that's a biggie. We need to make sure that there are clear job descriptions. And I know that we put in that line that says other duties as assigned. Unfortunately, with that, we need to make sure that we're letting people know what their expectations are, how they're going to be evaluated. I used to do evaluations on my team 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and a year. And the reason I did that is because I never wanted them to question what they were supposed to be doing. I wanted them to know. Plus, I wanted to break habits. What it takes a habit, 6 weeks to build takes 3 years to break. And I don't want to have to break those habits. I want to catch them early on. Plus, as they understood what they needed from me, they were always much more successful. So I want to make sure that we're giving people every opportunity to be successful every step of the way. I want to make sure that my foundation in base camp is strong and solid. And so that's why I focus a lot on what their expectations are. I take out a job description and I walk them through. I tell them how they're going to be evaluated. I tell them what my expectations are. And if I change those expectations, I make sure to let them know right away. We never want to keep people in the dark. It should never come as a surprise at the end of the year when you do that evaluation, something that they don't know. They should know exactly what it's going to look like at the end of the year. Oftentimes I would hand it to them and say, based on this evaluation, how would you score yourself? And then I would score them. Because that way I can see where we may have a disconnect. But I don't want to wait till the end of the year. So I take them through it at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and a year. And of course, I'm always coaching and developing throughout the time. My sole purpose as the leader of this team is to make sure that my team is successful. All my other work will get done because we're working collectively as a team. So if we change our mindset just a little bit and focus on our people, we'll always be more successful. The second question is, do I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right? And that is so important. We can't ask somebody to build a house and never give them a saw. We can't ask them to create a program and never give them a computer. We need to make sure that everything we're asking them to do, we've provided them the opportunity to do that. One of the other things I didn't have at my previous job was a chair. I had to bring one from home. And I tried to find something that was higher so that I didn't have to sit like this and I could sit like this and do my work. If we're having them figure out how they're going to do their job, then we are keeping them from being what we hired them to be, whatever that position may be. So we need to take a minute, we need to focus, and we need to help them to understand not only what their needs are, and help them to define those, but also to make sure that we're providing them what we need. Make sure their expectations are clear and make sure we give them what they need in order to be successful. That way they can never go wrong. So now that that's all said, I want you to do an assignment. And so these are going to be run just a little bit different. I'm going to tell you what we're talking about, and then I'm going to give you an assignment. And when you come back next week, we're going to talk about that. And I hope that you will email me at kim@preparetosoar.com some of the experiences that you're having in going through this journey and what you're discovering. Because I can help you that way, kind of jump over some of the roadblocks. And believe me, you will have some roadblocks. But there are some ways that you can overcome them, and I'm happy to share those with you. So here's your first part of the assignment. I want you to take a look at yourself. Start with you. We always need to do that. And we need to make sure that we're moving along the process as effectively as our team is. You never want them to surpass you and leave you in the dust. You want to do it collectively together. Some will be a little bit slower because some people may have taken the job because that's all they could find, which means that they really don't know what they're doing here and what their needs are. Maybe their main need is that they need an income, period. And they haven't thought any further than that. So we need to help them to define what they need to be looking at. And we can do that together as a team. The second thing I want you to do is look at your team and ask them, sit down one-on-one with them and ask them these questions outright. And you need to do this on a one-on-one. You don't want to do it as a group because pretty soon it's going to become, oh, I think this and I think this and I think this. I sat down with each of my team and early on in when I joined them, because I wanted to talk about some of the things that we were doing. I didn't tell them I was taking them on a mountain climb. They don't need to know that. Because if they figure it out, they're going to go, oh, they're doing one of those things again. We don't want them to think this is a thing. This is our way to help them be successful. And they don't need to know that we're invested in them, at least not yet. That's in a different part of the camp. So I want you to sit down and ask them each of these independently. Do you know what's expected of you at work? And they might go, I don't know. And then I would have the job description handy and I would sit down with them and say, okay, let's walk through your job description. Let's walk through the evaluation. I actually took an evaluation to them and said, here's what you're going to be evaluated on. Let's walk through this and talk about what a 5 looks like, because we were always scored on a 1 to 5 basis. I expect everybody's going to want a 5. Now, you're going to hear from your upper management, unless you're the CEO and founder, where they're going to say, but they always should never get a 5 because then there's no room for growth. No, they definitely should get a 5 every time, because then you know that they are fully exceeding your expectations. And then you're going to give them new tasks, and then you're going to start them at the bottom of the climb again. But that's part of what we're going to be talking about later. So yes, they should get 5s. If they're not getting 5s, then we're letting them down somewhere along the way. We want to make sure that every year they far exceed our expectations. And I know that one of the things that you're going to hear is, but it's tied to money. If we give them a 5, we have to give them the maximum amount of money. Remember, people are not always motivated by money. And we're going to talk more about what the power of that is in the next camp. And then finally, I want you to ask them what materials and equipment that they need in order to be successful. And sometimes we may have to invest in their future. And that's okay. Right now at work, I kind of have a keyboard that's kind of funky. And it kind of does its own thing. But I've learned how to adapt. Because right now we're investing in some other things that are going to make everybody's life better. And so sometimes we have to look at the greater good and the individual need. And we have to find a balance there. And we're going to talk about those balances as we go through each of these. So you have your assignment. First look at yourself and then sit down with your team. And remember, if you've been with me through the Leadership Challenge, you know that sitting down with your team is a regular occurrence. So this will be your next process and the next thing that you tackle. I think you're going to like this, and I hope you're as excited about this as I am. If you want to follow along, you can always go get the book by Marcus Buckingham, First Break All the Rules. And I hope that you'll join me for the next stage when we talk about Camp 1. Enjoy your week. I'm hoping to hear from you at kim@preparetosoar.com. Have a great one. Bye now.